Hello, you are listening to Underscore, a show by the Chicago Graphic Design Club. I am your host, Christian Solorzano, and I suppose you may also be watching this episode because today's episode is our first episode ever where we do a video component to it. And the reason being is that our guest, Aliona, a Ukrainian and Chicago-based graphic designer, will be sharing with us some of her work that we'll be looking at, discussing, and she'll be sharing with us some of the stories behind it. I first came into contact with Aliona a few years ago through the internet, and I was very captivated by her typography, by her compositions, by the experimental nature of her work that always felt like it was responding to something, like there was this careful consideration and observation to the stuff that she was trying to urge the viewer to look at and to think about. And in this conversation, we speak a lot about that. We talk about craft, we talk about her relationship to Chicago and the ways that she uses graphic design to raise awareness, to provide viewers with a call to action, and most importantly, to use graphic design as a vehicle for change and for some kind of greater good. So it's a great conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. We get a chance to have her show us some of that work and to talk about it with us. And she was also one of the featured contributors in our first issue of our publication, Faculty, which came out last year, which we still have a few copies of. And in this issue, she did a very interesting observation about architecture and gathering inspiration from iconic Chicago buildings and translating those into some kind of numerical sets that transformed into a digital clock that we'll be looking at and discussing in this episode as well. So great conversation, a lot of motivating insight about just understanding that we're all capable of using our skills to pretty much do anything, to collaborate, to participate, and to advocate for some kind of change that we all want to see. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope that you enjoy this conversation. And if you enjoy Underscore, this podcast, we would really appreciate you leaving us a rating wherever you listen. So thank you and enjoy the conversation. Good afternoon, Aliona. How are you doing today?
Hi, Christian. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So I've been wanting to have you on the show for quite some time, and we connected in late 2023 because when I stumbled upon your work, I think it was on Instagram, I was really interested in your perspective when it comes to typography and your observations about Chicago. And being someone that isn't from the city, I'm always really fascinated in the ways that someone from the outside looks in and is able to reinterpret something that I'm super familiar with, which is Chicago. So can we talk about your relationship with Chicago and what brought you here?
I arrived in Chicago almost 3 years ago for an art residency at the John David Mooney Foundation through the Ukrainian Art Bridge Fellowship. The fellowship was created after the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine and provides emergency residencies for Ukrainian artists, architects, and designers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was super, happy and excited to come here. And I was also excited about the fact that I could continue my long-term art project called City of Forms.
Mm-hmm.
It's a series where I explore different cities through letter forms, architectural shapes, and typographic compositions. For me, it's essential to keep my design practice open to artistic experiments, and this project allows me to do this. And I have done 4 cities so far: Kyiv, Prague, Pro, and Chicago. So I can share some images about this project.
Yeah, I would love to see the images, but I would love to hear about what was your first impression coming to Chicago? What did you see, and was there anything that stood out to you? Because I remember you had a submission in our magazine Faculty where you talked about the relationship between letter forms and architecture, and you were trying to draw some similarities there. So what stood out about Chicago? Was it the architecture? Was it the people? Was it the food? Like, what was going through your mind when you're, in this new city?
Yeah, sure. Architecture made a strong impression on me, and the foundation is located in downtown Chicago. So I was surrounded by all those amazing buildings. And well, actually, it was my first time in the USA, in the
Hmm.
US, and Chicago was my first American city. And I was amazed by the skyline, the rhythm of the streets, and the verticality. I have never seen such high buildings before. And actually, I was trying to find the subject, the topic, what I want to share about the city. And when I came here from my very first days, I was thinking about time in the city, trying to catch it, to feel it, to see it. I explored time through the city's scale, history, and movement.
Hmm.
And it was very personal because for many Ukrainians, time has felt frozen since 2022. And these past 3 years have collapsed in dramatic, tragic ways. So time is a very meaningful measure. And
Hmm.
I started exploring how to represent time visually through Chicago architecture. I created a kind of clock made of skyscrapers, each building becoming a number, shifting hour by hour. You may follow the link on my website and watch the clock in real time. So
Hmm.
I started at first making just abstract composition using color and form as a way to capture city views and impressions. But this is actually the concept of my project. And in every city, I made something which became a message about the certain city.
Hmm. Yeah. And even going further back, how did you get interested in design as a way of making meaning, as a way of making images? Have you just always been interested in graphic design, or how did that passion spark for you?
Yeah, maybe I worked only as a graphic designer and my life so far. And my parents had a big home library filled with all kinds of books, art albums, catalogs, self-published books, fiction, non-fiction, magazines. So I loved exploring all those books visually, and maybe it was during those moments in
Hmm.
childhood that something clicked, perhaps subconsciously, and I started wanting to design books and work with typography.
Hmm.
Actually, I love when abstract graphics meet typography to create a harmonious visual message. So this is my vision and yeah, my approach in graphic design.
Yeah. And do you remember some of the first things that you would create? Were they on the computer? Were they physical? What are some of your early memories of making
Well, my
something?
early memories, they were, from school when I was, creating a school newspaper. I also I designed the stages for different school parties. So actually, yeah, I really loved this making something then can connect all students visually,
Yeah.
represent some events.
I feel like that happens to a lot of people is that they're just interested in making things, and then later on they realize that this is actually a profession that they can do and they can pursue. So I really like that. So I know that, your work, I find it to be very, very interesting, and I love not only looking at it, but I also love reading about it. And I would love to have you maybe share with us some of your projects and maybe have you walk us through,
Mhm.
yeah, just your work.
Mhm. So here on my website, They're mostly all projects that I have made for the last 7 years, something like that. And so this is the City of Forms project. So the first chapter is Kyiv. So I call this, every segment of this project as a chapter because I want to make a book about this in the future. So I don't know how many cities will be in the end, but now I have 4 cities. But actually, I would like to explore more cities here in the US. And yeah, I really love to also to make such project about New York and Los Angeles. And so here in Kyiv, I explored the building, which is called UFO by locals. And it's a modernist building of our science and technical library. So I made this letter forms based on the shape of this building, and I created a textile. So this is me wrapped in this textile and stand in front of this building in the night. And in Prague, I continued exploring this connection between graphics and city environment. And I focused on the word lightness, a feeling I had through the city. So I created the word lightness in Czech, lehkost. It sounds a bit similar to the Ukrainian word lehkist. And the letter forms were based on the architectural contrast. I observed a heavy building top supported by light, elegant columns. I made these compositions as the route, direction towards something new and exciting. This is what lightness means to me. So it was like my one word manifesto.
Yeah.
So with this project, I wanted to claim other essential human feelings through a text installation. Well, I was told that locals had multiple interpretations of those mysterious lightness letters. Some thought it was a nightclub, others a rave music festival, or even a wellness spa or fitness club.
Yeah.
And in Dnipro, the Ukrainian city, I was struck by an abandoned building called the Theater on Water. So here's the image. And the way it is reflected in the lake gave me the idea of this transformation and multiplicity. I built an alphabet from that shape and tried to make a visual statement about preserving modernist architecture. And then came Chicago. Welcome to Chicago.
Yes.
So here is the numbers, the parts of the clock that I told you. So, and here are the buildings which inspired me a lot. So, and every building gave me this understanding of a shape of actually my interpretation.
Yeah.
This building in graphics. And yeah, really, I appreciate this dialogue that everything that surrounds us gives us this, some hints, some ideas to create graphic design, letter forms, symbols. So I made this 12 sets of different numbers. And yeah, this we can try to. Oh, do you see it? So the number 4.
Yeah.
So every hour the numbers change. So this is the set for 4 p.m. Also, during my residency, I created posters. So it was like a layout for every hour. And I made also 12 posters about each building, each set. And here are some views of my exhibit. I also had a table. It was a symbol of creative space, which is very meaningful for Ukrainians who are actually displaced right now, designers who left their studios in Ukraine. And for me, it's very important to create such, creative corner. I call this
Hmm.
corner, which is really like my design heaven, where I can sit, relax, work, focus
Hmm.
on my ideas. And yeah, and this creative routine is really a privilege when you can have it. And on this table, I put pages from my artist book. This book includes images from the buildings which I made, also different sketches, and my talk with Ukrainian journalist Lisa Karnichuk. We spoke about my experience of displacement and how I find different ways of coping. And I also put a lot of color paper inside of this book, showing also the color as a way of therapy,
Hmm.
and that it's really the colors really matters. When everything is dark, you need just bright colors. So when I was working on this project at the gallery at the studio, I was surrounded by color paper, and it was also like a healing process for me, and I made these color compositions.
Hmm.
So it was also my first impressions of the city. I put some graphics, like abstract impressions. So you may see here some shapes, Marina City,
Hmm.
and here something that resembles with Tribune Tower and the river and bridge.
Yeah.
And so this is a project that can continue forever, but yeah, maybe I'll do something about 10 cities. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I think it lends itself so great to a font family. Like I can imagine one font family and every weight is a different city. And maybe you can mix and match or you can, have different voices come to life on a page based on what font you choose. But I really love it. And as someone that is from Chicago, your interpretation of Chicago, I think, does a nice job at like accurately reflecting Chicago, I would say.
Thank
So
you.
so very nice. Yes. And then most recently, I know that you've been doing a project that you've been posting on your Instagram, and I believe it's the one that you have pulled up here. Yes.
Mhm.
So can we talk about this?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's a really important project for me. And actually, the impact of the war is tremendous and deeply personal. So I can't just, ignore that and do some abstract work. So I always want to be involved in such projects which promote Ukraine. And I find that graphic design became as a very strong tool for diplomacy. And I can that add that this war experience shifted, a lot of visions of.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, previously which we had for graphic design, and I mean, we have already seen a lot of graphic content, and war footage is updated daily. And I highly respect photographers who work on this, demonstrating the reality of war and Russian crimes. But drawing from that, I find it cartoonish.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that we need now to find different approaches in graphic design to engage and inform the international community effectively. That's why I see graphic design as a tool for diplomacy. And I have worked on several international projects about Ukraine across various fields, art, literature, and architecture. And for Constructing Hope Ukraine, an exhibit currently on view at the Chicago Architecture Center. Actually, yeah, this is my vision how we
Yeah.
can work on this topic. And for visual identity, I created this crisscross pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, these crisscross patterns, they are placed by Ukrainians on their windows to protect themselves from shattered glass
Mm-hmm.
caused by blast waves. And also the cross echoes with traditional Ukrainian embroidery, which makes this mark even more powerful. And it also has become a symbol of resistance and resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, it's also personal because on February 24th, the first day of invasion, my dad called me and asked, "Have you taped your window?" So it was like for everyone, the first thing that you had to
Mm-hmm.
do somehow to protect your home, your
Yeah.
family. So also the letter forms here convey the idea of a quick repair process. I saw many destroyed city signs after shellings, and that imagery stayed with me. And I incorporated customized letters into the title, blending them with the existing typeface, Alexer by Nicolas Fons, the
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainian typeface designer. So, and in this way, our approach, graphic design approach for this project was just to highlight the recent projects from Ukraine by architects, artists, and volunteers. And this exhibition explores how architecture and emergency repair efforts can support communities in rebuilding houses and find an emotional healing. Here
Yeah.
are some images from our participants. This is the exhibit view from Center for Architecture in New York. So previously this exhibition was open in New York last year,
Mm-hmm.
and in March arrived here in Chicago.
Yeah.
So we also used this yellow tape for interior design. So this cross worked as a layout for every design element, and we decided to use yellow also as a color of hope and one of the primary colors from the Ukrainian national flag.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the image from the opening in Chicago, featuring a presentation by the curatorial team: Sasha Topolnitska, Betty Royburt, Ashley Bigham, and Eve Feynman, director of exhibition at the Chicago Architecture Center. Also, I want to highlight that this cross was like a transformer.
Mm-hmm.
we we were working with this statement of construction, and found that these graphic elements of cross can be transformed, and we used it as a mark on our window, and inside the gallery we also made this cross as a navigation system. And for our interior design, exhibition design, we used it also like part of the layout. Also, I'd like to highlight that during this wartime, infographics as well as documentation are incredibly powerful tools today.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I found them really, more powerful than some outdated techniques like posters,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some kind of abstract posters, or as I mentioned previously, these drawings from the war footage. So I have moved away from designs simply copied from recent news images, as well as stereotypical visuals like bloodied Matryoshka or portraits of Putin and Hitler. So I find these images disturbing and cringeworthy. They only distract people from the real topics. So I believe that such kind of infographics, and we can see a lot of very strong infographics, by Ukrainian designers and international designers. And I think, yeah, that now we live in a digital or rather post-digital era and with plenty of footage available. So I don't think there is a need to rely on outdated techniques anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And would you say that your identity or your role as a designer has shifted because of everything that's going on into more of a graphic design as a means to respond to issues like this? Or like I'm just curious about how your perspective or your approach has shifted because of projects like this. Or have you always been looking at design as like a vehicle for action?
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. I try to be involved in different
Mm-hmm.
social cultural projects, and I also want to share another project that I made during these 3 years. It's a visual identity for the Ukrainian collective stand at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and this is an example of my shift.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to tell you that we have to be very focused on these recent events, that we don't need to rely on some trends or, I mean, visual effects. We have to be very concise working with a word topic. And for example, here in this project, my task was to convey the idea that the art piece destroyed by Russian troops in Mariupol is still alive. So this is the fragment of the mosaic that was destroyed by Russian troops in 2022. And originally, this mosaic was created by Ukrainian artist Alla Horska in 1967. So my task was to translate it into graphic design. I worked with its colors, primary shapes, and lines as the foundation for a graphic pattern and layout. And so this image is pretty psychedelic. So I wanted to find some elements that can work very neat as symbols, just to reduce
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them. And so this is the set of the stickers. And we can see this that each element of the mosaic became as a single symbol, and they can be everywhere
Yeah.
as stickers. And except this one, so this element is not from this mosaic. We decided also to include this very strong message from people who remained in Kherson while it was occupied by Russian troops, and people drew this Ukrainian letter Y as a symbol of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Russian language and Ukrainian language both use Cyrillic script, but alphabets have different letters. And this is the one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also very powerful how type, how font, yeah, can become a real symbol of resistance and fight with the occupants.
Mm-hmm. What I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about is that your work tends to have a very there's definitely an aesthetic at play, and I would say, it's very direct, concise use of visual elements. There's not too many flourishes, and when they're present, they're very intentional and they're there to serve a purpose rather than to just embellish. So I'd like to hear about whether you view these projects as if your taste or your personal aesthetics come into play here, or whether that isn't at play and it's just about the message, or just how does that, how do you, because I feel like as graphic designers, like so much of what we do is there is an element of beauty and taste and visual preferences. So can you talk a little bit about that visual language or that visual voice that you that is, you know, present throughout these projects that we've been looking at?
Yeah, actually, embellishments are now more relevant for me. It's also this one of the shifts that I had because of these limits that war brought us. They devastate us, and we need something, very bright and that can give us energy. So, and in graphic design, when everything is really minimalistic, sometimes, yeah, makes you feel a little bit depressed,
Hmm.
say. So even in this project, I made a lot of colors and I put people inside these, like, this mosaic became an environment for them, and all these lines and construction of this stage where speakers were presenting, it was a real, like, this bright and space of life. And
Hmm.
as you see this message, our topic of this stand was persistence of being. And
Hmm.
also I wanted to show in graphic design. So my aesthetics is more minimalistic, but as I mentioned, really I want to be focused on topic, on context, but I don't want to limit myself anymore.
Hmm.
Because actually, yeah, life now is very limited, and there is really a need to create things which are vital and
Hmm.
expressive. And I was super happy when I saw the first lady, Helena Zelenska, when she was sitting in this environment talking about Ukraine and Ukrainian libraries, or our Oscar-winning director Mstislav Chernov uh, was sitting and talking in front of this graphics. So I was super happy how graphic design can be part of their speeches, and that they were sitting not in front of such, gray wall. And
Hmm.
behind them was this bright and strong graphics showing that despite this destruction that Russian troops brought us, we can create a new version of this mosaic and
Hmm.
showing it for the international audience while Mariupol is occupied and we can't restore the original mosaic.
Yeah, because I was about to say, like, you know, a lot of the subject matter that you're discussing here is obviously it could be, I mean, it's dark, it's sad, and I think your your representation definitely feels like there's hope, and it doesn't feel depressing, it doesn't feel sad, it feels very action oriented. It feels very forward thinking. So that's, I mean, that's my observation. Even the project that we were looking at previously, Constructing Hope, I mean, it looks like a hopeful engaged piece. So I really appreciate you, doing a lot of this work.
Thank you.
Yeah. So today, so for a lot of these projects, I'm curious about how do they how do they get brought to your attention or to your table, or like how do you initiate and work through these projects? Like what's your process like when being briefed on a and any of this stuff?
Well, actually, everything inspires me.
Okay.
Movies, music, art, street science, fashion, architecture, nature. So, yeah, life itself and is a constant source of inspiration. But now, living in a post-digital era, it's crucial for me to find a balance
Mm-hmm.
between digital tools and something light, tactile, and human. So actually, yeah, when I after receiving a brief, I try to walk to listen to a good music, but I want, well, I mean that getting a brief, I try to get it very detailed, and I try to speak a lot with my clients, because when people come to me, they consider the style, my vision of graphic design, and after that, we can talk about their expectations, and
Yeah.
it's easier to work when we speak the same language. And so yeah, after briefing, I try to find the perfect music for this project, and then
Yeah.
follow the rhythm, the vibes,
Yeah.
yeah, or to watch some movie
Yeah.
that can be connected to the topic, and yeah, and to work, just
Mm-hmm.
to get some energy for creating, and then yeah.
Yeah. And coming to the United States 3 years ago, can you share with us what's your overall impression on design in the United States? How do you just what's your assessment? What's your critique? What do you think about the landscape of design? Because I'm very curious what you have to say, and I've talked with other designers from different parts of the world, and they always have an interesting perspective. So what would you say is your
Well,
critique or your
yeah,
assessment?
well, actually, I don't have any critique. I just can say that when I arrived here, I noticed that a lot of things that I love here, they are established, and I don't need just to try to convince my clients that it can be a design here. You
Yeah,
use a lot of just typography, and that I really love how colors work with typography, and a lot of beautiful designs based on geometry and typography and color. So this is the main thing that I love in design. And here in the States, I
mhm,
see a lot of these examples and organization of the streets
yeah,
layouts, even all these, street sides, road signs, they were for me at the first days like wow, elements and really pieces of great design. And yeah, and a lot of designs that you can see in supermarkets for food. There, I like that a lot of them based on typography, and it's really amazing
yeah,
that here in the States, typography is so variable. And yeah, this is what really inspires me, and I would love to extend my practice here, and yeah, to work and collaborate with American clients, institutions.
okay. You're very nice.
Yeah, yeah, and I also love, this quirky signs that you can see here in Chicago, in Old Town or Ukrainian Village, Wicker Park.
Yeah,
Uh, I was absolutely amazed when I saw such things in Los
yeah,
Angeles and Hollywood. It was just wow. It was like I was just inside of a book about
yeah,
graphic design in the States. Yeah, and New York, of course, it's like a city of graphic design. I think once I told to my friends that it seems for me like the city was created by graphic designers, and
yeah.
they told to architects how to build this city.
That's funny. So your work, it's obvious that it's work that has a call to action. What would be your advice to someone that is looking to also do purpose-led work like the work that you're doing? How can they do work that is beyond their client's work?
Oh.
Yeah, because I think
Mm.
because I think for designers, like if we go to school and we hope to get a job, and then we get a job, and then kind of we think that that's all graphic design is, a transaction. But in your case, you are taking your practice and you're extending it and you're using it as a utility to call for something. So, what would be your advice for someone that doesn't know where to start, doesn't know how to respond or how to, you know,
Yeah, just can share it from my personal perspective that I started doing that because that was a real need for me. And
mm,
before making this City of Forms project, I also had a real, interest in graphic design history. And I also cooperated with my peers and we created a big research project about Ukrainian trademarks. And it was just our need to fill these gaps in our education. So I think it comes from your personal need in graphic design.
yeah,
What do you feel exactly? What do you need? And you can just do it, and there is no any like tips, I mean, exact directions. So
mm,
if someone feels that he needs to do some abstract murals, so yeah, just do that.
yeah,
Yeah, just I think just the main idea not to limit yourself. And
mm,
but actually you have to be honest with yourself. There are two types of designers. There are designers who follow creative approach and designers who are happy just with some technical stuff and
mm,
working with typesetting, and it's not a problem for them, then they just don't need any extension of this. But who really needs, I think, yeah, it's just a way just to tell to yourself what is your real need, and how do you want to improve yourself as a graphic designer, artist, or
mm,
I know that, for example, my friends architects, they also like to do some artworks which are not connected to exact architectural projects, but they love to do some installations, so, which also extend their practice. So it's, yeah, it's just a way to always make yourself happy with your profession.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And can maybe you share so you mentioned like filling your personal needs, and I'm curious about what are some of your needs, or what are some of the gaps that maybe you felt have been the things that you've worked on the most, or some of those challenges that you felt you had to kind of learn on your own or figure out on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's also important to have an environment of people who can
Mm-hmm.
inspire you. I always try to be surrounded by creative people and follow them, what they do. And it also gave me understanding of things, yeah, what I need in my
Mm-hmm.
career or just in my practice.
Yeah. Yeah. So outside of, I'm curious about outside of design and everything that we're talking about, did you ever consider a different path? Was there in another world? Are you doing something entirely different?
Yeah, there is a dream, but I don't know if I ever will realize it. But actually, filmmaking is something that
Okay.
bothers me that I
Yeah.
want to do in the future. And but yeah, but I really love movies about graphic design, and but there are not so many movies. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not documentaries, fiction movies about graphic designers.
What are you listening to? What are you reading? Like, what's inspiring you lately when you're not focused on your work?
For the maybe last month, I was just listening only to to the music from David Lynch movies, and
Okay.
I made a playlist, and so it's really became for me like inspiration, and
Mm,
it was a very beautiful retrospective here in Chicago, the music box, and so yeah, and a lot of rhythms give me give me for these days, give me these directions
Mhm.
for my work. But I would say that I have like different playlists for different types of work, for creative part, for typesetting, for edit.
Yeah.
So yeah, and for creative part, I prefer listening just to some electronic music, which can give me this, vibes of energy, and I don't want to be, distracted by lyrics.
Yeah.
So yeah, and for me, this is the perfect artist, FX Twin, that always he gives me always a good ideas when I listen to his music.
Yeah.
So and yeah, and when I do some technical work, then I can switch to these songs
Okay.
with lyrics.
Very cool. I feel like your clock needs music, and based on the time of day, it adapts to different music for that time.
Yeah, but actually, I presented my project in Prague with Ukrainian musician, electronic musician Syracuse, and she played an amazing live during the presentation when we switched on these letters, all those letters.
Yeah.
And it was very beautiful live performance with lights. So yeah, music and graphic design, they're very connected, and for different types of graphic design and different ages. So like previously jazz was maybe the very important for graphic designers. Now it's really more relevant listen to
Yeah.
the electronic music. So yeah, it's just my opinion, and
Yeah.
I don't think that it's something that is just a statement, but yeah, it depends on also on project, on concept, on context, which
Yeah.
music to follow during your work.
Okay. I feel like you need to create a playlist for us. We need a
I'd
mixtape.
love to. Yeah, one day, when I was 13, I joined the school of DJs, but it was only one day. My parents, they didn't allow me to go there anymore.
That's funny. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you or if anyone wants to learn more about you, we will put your description and all your details in the description for this episode. But what's the best way to get a hold of you if someone wants to chat with you?
Instagram, and
Okay.
use
Okay.
Instagram for connection.
Yeah. And are there any other big projects or anything else that you're working on that you haven't shared yet that we can be out on the lookout for?
Well, now I'm just at the beginning of some new projects, but maybe it's better to tell about them a bit later. So
Okay.
just beginning, and yeah,
Yeah, I
I don't
understand.
want to compromise my clients.
I understand. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I really look up to your work, and I hope that we can keep the door open and hopefully we can do a collaboration together in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was really nice to talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the conversation, we would really appreciate you leaving us a rating wherever you listen. It really helps us out. It helps us expand our reach and lets us feel supported. So thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.